What's going on, guys? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you some pros and cons of the BLU V81. Before we go any further though, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot. But now, let's get into the video. So my first pro for this phone is the processor. This phone is getting 3 GB of RAM with the Unisoc SC9863A processor. Despite the sort of weird name, this processor is actually pretty powerful and reliable for the price range this phone is in. Getting 3 GB of RAM, while definitely not by any means high-end or uncommon, even for this price range, is nice because I've seen plenty of phones in the same price range that only have 2 GB of RAM, so having that extra gigabyte of RAM is definitely going to help with your multitasking, or if you're just doing a little bit more demanding activities. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone and it came back with a single core score of 152 and a multi-core score of 821. So again, for this price range, that's actually pretty impressive. In comparison to the more mid-level phones that have multi-core scores even into the 1500s, this does look a little weak, but you gotta remember, this is a very entry-level phone, and compared to other entry-level phones like it, this is actually pretty impressive. So if you're doing more basic activities like making calls, sending text messages, and then browsing the web and some light social media use, and of course content consumption like streaming videos, then this phone is going to work out perfectly fine and give you a much better experience than a lot of other phones in its class. My second pro for this phone is the large display. At 6.5 inches, while there are phones out there, mostly mid-range and higher end phones that are a lot bigger than this, for its price range, this phone does have a pretty large display. Now, it's not really that uncommon for any phone these days to have a 6.5 inch display, but of the phones that have smaller displays, they're usually around this price range, so that is a nice strength of this phone to have a good sized display like this. This is going to be good for content consumption, so if you're streaming videos, viewing photos, even just reading, everything is of course going to show up a lot larger on this phone than it would on a phone with a smaller display, so it's going to give you a better experience overall. My third pro for this phone is the battery. This phone has a 5000 milliamp hour battery. This supports 10-watt fast charging, and this is a large battery. Some flagship phones don't even have that. You're gonna get a ton of battery life out of this phone, probably won't even have to charge it during the day until it really starts to wear out and get super old. And even if you do have to charge it during the day, being able to support 10-watt fast charging is gonna allow you to charge it a lot more in a shorter period of time, so you won't have to wait around for your phone to charge up. In addition to this, if you like to keep the same phone for a longer period of time without having to replace it, a large battery will once again come in handy, because while all batteries, including this one, are gonna degrade over time and eventually become pretty much unusable, with a larger battery like this, it's not going to really be affected as quickly as a smaller battery, so you'll be able to use the phone and keep it for a lot longer than say an iPhone 12 that has just over a 2800 milliamp hour battery, so around half the size of this phone's battery. My fourth pro for this phone is the storage. This phone has 64 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion. Compared to a lot of higher end phones maybe, this is really not that impressive, but compared to other phones in this price range, while it's not unheard of to have this much storage, it's definitely not nearly as common. Most entry-level phones have somewhere around 32 gigabytes, sometimes as little as 16. So this phone has quite a bit more. So if you're a power user who's planning on having lots of different apps on the phone, especially the larger ones like games, but still want to stay with an entry-level phone, this is going to be a great option because there are really only a handful of phones in this price range that have this much storage. My fifth and final pro for this phone is the device security. This phone has face unlock as well as a nice fingerprint scanner right here. And again, like most of the pros for this phone, while it's not unheard of for an entry-level phone to have these things, a lot of the times entry-level phones only have a fingerprint scanner or face unlock, one or the other, not both. And some of them have neither, so you have to put in a PIN or a password. So having two options to unlock your phone without a PIN or a password is really nice at this price point. So we're gonna test out this fingerprint scanner real quick and see how fast it works. And there we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, this fingerprint scanner is real fast and responsive. Definitely no issues here. And face unlock works really well too. So if you're looking for an entry-level phone and having a fingerprint scanner and face unlock is important to you, this phone is gonna be a good option. So now that we've gone over some of the good stuff, let's talk about the not so good stuff. My first con for this phone is the video quality. This phone can shoot 1080p videos in the rear camera, but only 720p in the front. And not only that, but the videos don't look very good at all. And the microphone isn't the best either, so the audio quality is also gonna be pretty low. So if you're trying to shoot any serious videos that you wanna keep, I wouldn't do them on this phone. Snapchat's gonna be okay because those just go away after a little bit, but actual videos that you care about, I would probably not use this phone for that purpose. My second con for this phone is actually pretty similar, and that is the camera features. For our rear camera setup, we got just two cameras on the back with a 13 megapixel rear camera and a 0.3 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode. And while I guess it's nice that the phone has portrait mode, it's not very good. At this level, I don't even know why they bothered. The portrait mode in and of itself looks pretty choppy and pretty low quality. And it doesn't have an ultra wide camera or a macro camera or any of that other stuff that's been popular these days. And in addition to this, while the quality of the photos taken with this camera isn't horrible, it's still not very impressive. So if you are taking photos to keep and want more high quality stuff for social media, then I would probably consider a different device because this one is gonna be a little disappointing in that area. My third con for this phone is the Google Assistant button. Right here, we got a Google Assistant button, and this is one of the most annoying things that I find on phones, especially the more entry-level ones. I've never had a situation where this is actually useful. The only experience I've ever had with it is accidentally activating it when I'm trying to use the prevent ringing feature or take a screenshot. It's never actually been truly useful. And since there are so many other ways that you could activate a Google Assistant, I feel like a dedicated button is pretty useless. Now, the exception to this rule is if it were a smart key instead. That could be pretty cool. I could see that there. Again, I probably wouldn't use it, but being able to use it for something else besides just the Google Assistant would be really cool. My fourth con for this phone is the software. Right now, this phone is on Android 10, and don't expect to get any updates for it because BLU doesn't typically do that. So if you get this phone, you're gonna be stuck with Android 10 for the life of it. Now, if that doesn't bother you, then this con doesn't really count for anything. But if you do want a newer version of Android, then it's definitely gonna be a disappointment. Right now, we're on Android 11, and Android 12 is probably gonna be coming out pretty soon. So this phone is pretty outdated when it comes to software. My fifth and final con for this phone is that it has MicroUSB. Right down here, as you can see, we got a MicroUSB port. Most devices that aren't iPhones use USB-C these days, and it's honestly just a better quality, better technology, more modern, all that kind of stuff. There's a reason that manufacturers have been switching to USB-C, but having micro USB on this phone means that it's probably gonna be a little bit harder to find nice accessories for it, and the experience overall is not gonna be as good. But those were my pros and cons for the BLU V81. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to learn more about the phone, definitely check out my full review of the device as well. But that's it for this video. As always, I'll see you guys in the next one.